Hello. Hello. I'm here talking to you again. So I'm thinking about, why do you always skip over the most obvious question? Because in grade school, we think about the most obvious question: 1 + 1 = 2. And 2 + 2 = 4. And there's nothing else that could ever replace that. It's so easy and so simple. But then when we grow up in things, simple turns into difficult. The basics aren't the basics anymore. The basics are difficult and overcomplicated, and I tend to find myself overcomplicating things all the time and not even thinking about the most obvious answer, which may be the right answer, but because it's so simple, I don't think it's the right answer. I don't really think about it, and I wonder why that is. As Christians, why do we not ask the most obvious answer? Most obvious answer is, or most obvious question you could ask, is God love? Yes. So therefore, when he's love, all the complicated things go into a sort of alignment where you don't have to figure out the difficult details. You could just ask the simple question: does God love me? Yes. And wouldn't that avoid all this overthinking and thinking that God will never forgive you and thinking that he's going to persecute you for sin? I mean, wouldn't that avoid all these problems, right? It would avoid the fear. What does God want from us? He wants faith, not fear. So why go in this circle of fear and everything to get to faith? And even though everything has a purpose, it does. But I'm just coming here to talk about the simple things. The simple things that make us the foundation, the basic foundation, which Jesus talks about a lot, of a foundation that he built, and whether he's on your foundation or not. And I really think as Christians, especially as beginner Christians, I talked about basics. I went back to the basics, everything from scratch, literally everything from scratch, where I asked God the most simple answers. It was so simple that I thought it was dumb. And really I just think that we hype ourselves up so much to a point where we don't think we have to ask those questions anymore because they're so simple. And I think about them all the time in my head. I'm just like, nah, that's too simple. It has to be more difficult, like in this lifetime, because we're used to a lifetime with Christ and it's always difficult. But what about when it's simple? Because I find myself living this not a simple life, but it was a simple day. And I thought that I wasn't right with God because it was a simple day. Nothing went wrong. Everything was just normal. And usually with Christ, everything's not always normal, Everything's either chaotic, amazing, or all in one. But you never really have a simple day because it's always an adventure. And I'm not saying that every day will be simple. I'm not saying every day will be hard or every day will be challenging. But I found myself just thinking, like, if I have a simple day, what do I do? Like, there's nothing to do. It feels like there's no reason to pray. It feels like there's no reason to talk to God because we're just sitting in bed and doing nothing, But even then, there's always a reason. And I connect this with math. Now, we all know with math, we all start off with 1 + 1, 2 × 2, and so forth and so forth. And then we progress to middle school, and that's the beginning of algebra, geometry, whatever you want to call it. And then high school, and it gets more difficult. And in grade school, of course, we learn the basics. The basics of everything. It sets our foundation for math, and then we easily progress. And then in the difficult parts, sometimes in algebra, I had to ask simple questions. And I felt dumb. Because why would I have to ask a simple question, something that I learned in the 4th grade, right? Was it I forgot? Did I not know? Did I not catch this? Like, even with simple math, sometimes I get caught up in it. Like, multiplying decimals or subtracting decimals. And I'm horrible at that. In fact, I think I didn't even want to listen to it because I was so bad at it, so I just completely ignored it. But that's besides the fact. Like, what if we don't have that foundation of the simple basics, of the basics, and then when we progress to the difficultyness, then we're all in a bunch and we don't know what to do, and we just if you're like me, you want to forget about it. You want to face it anymore because you're just so tired of facing it. You're just like, oh my gosh, I just can't do this anymore. And I just want to be done. That's a sign of giving up. And you don't really want to go through that. And a lot of times with Christ, we lose our basics. And even in this world, we lost our basics. You could use in the justice system the basics of compassion. You can tell they lack compassion because in difficult situations, they don't use it. They don't have understanding because in the difficult situations with choosing a case, they don't use it. You can use it through anything in life because we lack basics in our community, and somehow we would just want to jump into difficult situations thinking that we can handle it, because honestly, if I have to be honest, difficult situations seem easier than basics, because with basics, now you're unloading something, now you're opening something, because in grade school we totally fly by the basics and everything, and we know, and when you bring up simple things, you're like, yeah, I know, but would you be able to explain it? Like a lot of times when I was in the beginning of my walk with Christ, I would ask myself basic questions like, what is faith? What is compassion? What is trust? And I would have to ask myself those questions, and sometimes I couldn't even answer them. Sometimes I thought that, oh yeah, I know what faith is, because in difficult situations you're like, yeah, I know this, but in simple situations, just like, do I actually know this? Like, if I actually had to define faith, could I do it? If I actually had to define compassion, could I explain it? And a lot of times we can't. It's usually the simple things that trip us up the most. The simple decisions. It's a simple decision that trip us up the most. Difficult decisions are easy. When it's difficult, now we have things to work with. We have details to look at. Simple, it's black and white. We don't really have anything to work with. We can't blame anything for it. We don't have an explanation for it. It's simple, flat out, plain. And the challenge is to go back to the basics. I wonder if as a nation, if we can ever just go back to the basics and how everything would change, because everything would change. It's because it's not difficult doesn't mean that change isn't happening. And people have to know that your life does not have to be difficult in order to change. You don't have to be crying every single day and mad every other day in order to change. You can be normal and still be changing your habits. It's a basic principle, our basic principles, which is what we lack. We don't lack things in difficult situations. We lack things in simple situations. And that's what messes up in difficult situations, because we're not thinking of the simple answers. We're thinking of the complicated answers first instead of a simple answer. Like, I was having this mental breakdown over my final. My first semester finals, I was totally having a meltdown because I had something to prove. I wanted to get, all A's and B's on my finals, which I never had before. So I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I forgot the basics of what God taught me, to trust Him, and just to sit down and think about what is actually happening here. Why am I actually tripping up right now? Is it because I have something to prove to other people or to myself? Is it because I don't want to fail and see that F again, or is it something else? And of course, I went to the complicated first. We're trying to answer the complicated questions, but sometimes the complicated questions can be answered with a simple answer. The reason why I was so tripped up about my finals is because I was scared. Simplest answer. I was scared that I was going to fail. I was scared that I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror after that. And I was scared that God was going to fail me, because I prayed for it hard. And I knew about miracles, but I never really witnessed a miracle in my life before that. So I was scared. And I made it a whole big deal. I had a whole mental breakdown that could have been avoided if I just answered the simple question, why am I freaking out? And a lot of times we can avoid complicated situations if we ask ourselves the simple question, why do you like this dude? Why do you feel the need to be snappy at people? What's wrong with your attitude? You know? Go back to the simple answers. Go back to your foundation, because I know veteran Christians and people walking with God who've been doing this for a while, I know me, and I've been here for a year, and I don't really think about the basics like that anymore because I know it, so therefore I don't really think about it like that. But sometimes I find myself, I have to think about it. Sometimes I have to talk it out with myself. I have to get to the issue. Because a real deep issue is a simple answer. Trust me, it's a simple answer. All the things that me and God went through, it was a simple answer when we got to the bottom of it. But I could have avoided a lot of stuff, a lot of thoughts, and a lot of pain if I just asked myself the simple question and not automatically go to the complicated, because I think that just because I'm in a complicated situation means I have to have a complicated answer. It's not like that at all. You're in a complicated situation and you're looking for a simple answer. Yeah, that's all I have today. Y'all have a blessed day. Hopefully this touches someone. Bye.